The summer's getting ready to wind down, which means fall seeding time is about upon us. In today's video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about the cool season grass types so that you can choose the best grass for your yard. So let's get out of the weeds. If you like these videos, please subscribe to this channel. I really do appreciate your support. With the cool season grasses I'm going through today, I'm going to be breaking down each one of them based on these metrics. Are they good in sun versus shade? How long they take to germinate? Do they grow in clumps or are they spreading? And how high of maintenance are they? And lastly, stick around to the end because I'm going to be going through the exact grass seed that I'm going to be putting down in my yard this year. The first grass on the list is ryegrass. Now when we're talking about ryegrass, I'm going to be typically mentioning perennial ryegrass because you also are going to see out there annual ryegrass. Now just be careful because if you go and buy a bag of annual ryegrass, it is an annual, so it's going to have that 1 year. So if you're going to look for ryegrass this year, make sure it's perennial ryegrass so that you can actually have it year after year. With talking about perennial ryegrass, its signature thing is its quick germination. That is its superpower. Beyond any of the other cool season grasses, perennial ryegrass germinates in about 4 to 7 days, far exceeding what most of the other cool season grasses are going to be able to give you. It is also a grass that's very good in full sun, but just know that perennial ryegrass is a higher maintenance grass, meaning that you're going to want to water it regularly and also give it regular fertilizer applications so that way it can maintain its really good appearance. But if you're willing to put in the work there, it can be a really good grass for your yard. The thing to note with perennial ryegrass is it is in a lot of grass seed mixtures. Now when we talk about grass seed mixtures, this is going to be where companies will mix 2 different grass types together and then give you a mixture when you buy a bag where it won't just be one grass type. Perennial ryegrass is thrown in very often because of how quick it germinates. So when you're at the store and you see fast germinating or quick results, any kind of those keywords, look at the seed tag on the back and there's a high chance that you're going to see perennial ryegrass in there because it germinates faster than pretty much any of the other cool season grasses by a long shot. Lastly, the thing to note about perennial ryegrass is that it is a clumping type grass, meaning that it grows in clumps and doesn't typically spread. So it doesn't really have the reach to be able to fill in bare spots kind of on its own as it spreads around. Now they have here recently have come up with new kind of varieties of perennial ryegrass that actually do have some rhizomes that will do a little bit of spreading. It's still not going to be to the point of, say, some of your other grasses like Kentucky bluegrass that we all know and love, but there are some varieties of perennial ryegrass that will spread. But just know, most of the stuff you're going to see in the store will not be a spreading type grass. So it's time to put on some shades because we're talking about fine fescue. Man, is it looking fine, and it does good in the shade. With fine fescues, they can do okay in the full sun, but where you're really going to see them shine is going to be more in your dense shade mix. The areas and parts of your house that don't get near as much sunlight, that's where the fine fescues are going to come in. If you have a spot under a tree that's kind of shaded a lot and you don't know if you can grow grass there, try fine fescue because it's going to be your best bet. The thing with fine fescue, it's going to germinate somewhere in the middle, about 7 to 14 days, kind of in that range. It's going to be a lower maintenance grass, so you're not going to need the same watering and fertilizer requirements as some of our higher maintenance grasses, even just like the perennial ryegrass I just mentioned. With the fine fescues, you're a lot of times going to see them kind of in 2 different types as far as their spreading. You're going to have your creeping fine fescue, and then you'll have your chewing fine fescue is what you'll typically see. With the creeping, it creeps right along and will be a spreading grass. The chewing fescue is going to be a clumping style grass, so you kind of have best of both worlds. What you'll typically see with fine fescues is a lot of times they're also in mixes, so a lot of times they're not the heavy hitter in your seed mixtures. They're usually kind of just sprinkled in there to kind of help give some of that shade tolerance to some of your grass seed mixes. Next, I'm going to be talking about tall fescue. Now this is the one that I kind of get the most heat on some of my videos when I talk about, because I bash some of the tall fescue that people really seem to love. Now, when I talk about tall fescue, you always want to break it up into two different types. You have your traditional tall fescue, which is a real thick, kind of clumpy grass that doesn't blend with most of the other cool season grasses. But on the other hand, they have turf type tall fescue, which is going to be a thinner bladed grass that blends a lot better with the other cool season grasses, and also gives you the good characteristics of the original kind of tall fescue grass that was known for. Where it kind of gets into controversy is a lot of times I will kind of bash the real thick old stuff. A lot of times you'll see as in Kentucky 31, it's kind of a pasture grass. Now, where you're going to see this typically is like on the side of highways, in commercial areas that aren't going to typically get full maintenance by getting water and fertilized regularly. They're just kind of exposed to nature, and it does really well in that, because tall fescue, the best characteristic of it is it really is kind of can be whichever way you want it to be. It can do pretty good in the shade, it can do really good in the full sun, doesn't really cause you a lot of problems. It's just kind of there and just does its thing and survives it. So it's a really hardy grass that can do really well. So that's why a lot of people, if you have a really big yard that is hard to kind of manage because it's so big, going with that Kentucky 31 can be a good option, because you're not kind of giving it the normal just maintenance that you are with somebody with a smaller yard. Now, if you have a smaller yard that you're going to be fertilizing regularly and watering regularly, and that you can go with the turf type tall fescue, which is going to give you a lot of the same characteristics of the thicker stuff. It'll just blend in better with your cool season grass. So I like to make that distinction, because you get a lot of the same characteristics with both. One just doesn't blend in very well. Just be careful whenever it comes to the tall fescue. I'll typically want to lean towards turf type tall fescue. Now with tall fescue grass, you're going to get a germination somewhere in the middle between 7 to 14 days typically. It's going to be a low maintenance grass like I just said, and it can thrive in full sun and even do pretty well in the shade. So it can kind of give you best of both worlds. Very low maintenance grass when it comes to fertilizing and water. It's very drought tolerant in that way. Now, lastly, with the tall fescue, it's typically a clumping type grass. Now, over the last few years, they have developed different varieties of tall fescue that have started to spread. And one of the most well-known ones is RTF, Rhizomatous tall fescue, because it spreads through rhizomes similar to how Kentucky bluegrass does. Now, it's not going to be as aggressive as Kentucky bluegrass is with its spreading, but you will get some of that spreading and be able to kind of help repair itself over the long term. So it's a very, very formidable grass type. Now, last but certainly not least, we're talking about Kentucky bluegrass. Good old faithful, the grass that everybody knows, everybody's heard of. It's the most famous cool season grass. Now when we're talking about Kentucky bluegrass, you gotta know, it makes you wait for all that beauty and all that dark, deep green goodness that it provides, because it is the longest germinating grass. You're typically going to be seeing it somewhere in that 3 to 4 week mark. Yep, you heard it. Around 20 to 30 days, somewhere in that range is when you're going to start seeing the germination. Now, over the last few years, they have kind of gotten some different varieties of Kentucky bluegrass that they say germinates quicker, but it's still going to be on the slower end. If you want the results of a Kentucky blue, you're just going to have to be patient when you put that seed down and keep it watered in. With Kentucky bluegrass, the other thing is it is finicky. It is a high maintenance grass. It's going to need good regular watering and good fertilizing. So you want to have kind of your lawn care schedule on lockdown so that you can have a really nice, beautiful yard. But it will reward you because it is the darkest grass out of any of the cool season grasses. But just know it's going to take a little bit of work, but that hard work will pay off and you can have a beautiful lawn. Kentucky bluegrass also does really well in full sun, so it just does really good with the conditions. It can do okay in some partial shade, but not as well as your fine fescues or your tall fescue, but it'll thrive in your full sun environments. So when it comes to any of our cool season grasses, there's a couple of things that I typically I like to recommend. When it comes to grass cutting height, with any cool season grass, yes, you're going to see people online that are able to take any type of grass type down to like a 1/4 inch and have this like putting green looking lawn. But for your average person, I don't really recommend taking any of the cool season grasses below about 2.5 inches. 2.5 inches is about the lowest I'll typically recommend, just because it gets harder to maintain a really nice yard year round below that mark. If you go, the higher you go, typically the easier your grass and lawn is to maintain. Now with all of the cool season grasses, tall fescue is typically the one that likes to be cut the highest out of all of them. So if you're going to lean towards tall fescue, I would lean on the higher end, like 3.5, 4 inches anyway, because that's where it really thrives. So now, the moment you've all been waiting for. What grass type am I going to be putting down in my lawn? So, as many of you have been kind of following this channel, I used to have a really beautiful lawn in my old house, but I went from hero to zero when I've come to my new house, and I have been battling this lawn for a while here, just not quite getting it right. So this is the time where I'm going to get this yard fixed this year, and the grass type that I am choosing is going to be we're going with Advanced RTF. So I am going with turf type tall fescue, and specifically the RTF, the Rhizonomus tall fescue. Now this to me is my favorite grass, and I've seeded with it in the past. I did a big job at my parents' lawn a few years ago. You can see here from the before and after, their yard turned out beautiful. Now my parents aren't ones to always be fertilizing it and watering it and all of that all the time. And year round, no matter when you go over to their house, their yard is looking really good. It's really thick, it's really green, it's just a nice looking lawn. And so it's something that I wanted to be able to put down here at my house. Now with grass seed, I always tell people you get what you pay for. If you're going to pay up for anything in lawn care, grass seed is where you do it, because you will reap the benefits of buying really good quality grass seed. If you go cheap with grass seed, it's going to cause extra problems in your lawn. Now, in my next video, I'm going to be breaking down how to read a grass seed sheet so you can know exactly what's in the bag and what you should be looking for when you're seeing kind of all those numbers there. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you know how to now choose the best grass seed for your lawn. And I'll see you next time when we get out of the weeds and into a beautiful lawn.